and whether voters are still choosing politicians or politicians are choosing voters. Across the country, we're watching a new wave of redistricting battles unfold: court fights, state fights, constitutional fights. And underneath all of it is a deeper question: what's left of the Voting Rights Act? We're breaking down the history, the legal fights, the political strategy, and why veterans and every single American should care deeply about what's happening right now, especially in the Southeast. And tonight, this conversation matters even more because we're joined by voices doing this work directly on the ground. Someone I know personally. Organizations like Black Voters Matter aren't just talking about voting rights academically. They're organizing in communities that are directly impacted by redistricting battles, voter suppression fights, and declining trust in our institutions. So tonight, I want to welcome my good friend, Jamil from Black Voters Matter. Oh, Jamil, welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Salutations to all, and good evening, good morning, good night. My name is Jamil Davis. I am the North Florida League Regional Organizer for Black Voters Matter. We are an organization that does work in 20 plus states across the country around voter advocacy, legislative advocacy, as well as capacity building. Basically, just finding the organizations that's doing the work on the ground and providing them with the resources to further along the work. We're an organization that's been 10 years in existence. This year is our 10th anniversary. And it's just a pleasure and honor to be here as we are talking about how many of these states across the South are essentially silencing not just Black voices, but also silencing Black voters through the gerrymandering of these maps.
100%. And we're so excited you're here. I'm so glad that you accepted my invitation. We're going to welcome Hannah next. Hannah is in North Carolina. Hannah.
Hey y'all, Hannah here in North Carolina. I am with Common Defense. I am one of their organizers here. And I'm also a civilian board member for 5051 Vets. And I'm really excited to be able to get the chance to talk with y'all tonight about this issue.
Thanks, Hannah, for always being our civilian that sits here and listens to us. I'd like to welcome Sam from South Carolina.
Good evening. I'm Sam. I am a Marine veteran, 5051 SC State Liaison, and a candidate in the Republican primary for South Carolina's 2nd Congressional District. And I am excited to be able to talk about this thing that I deeply despise, and that is partisan politics and gerrymandering.
We're always glad you're here, Sam. Taking on the party from within is always a hard tactic, but one that is duly noticed, right, within our party. Next, I would like to welcome Rory, who is also in North Carolina.
How's it going, y'all? Rory, 5051 Vets Comms Director, also in the Fayetteville area of North Carolina. Happy to be here. Hate what we're talking about because of us being here, but it's conversations that need to be had, and let's get it done.
I always love your introductions of yourself because they're always so fucking whimsical for a veteran podcast. It's always so just you can tell you're an artist, and I love you for it. Next, I'm going to welcome Tom. Tom is from one of our partner organizations, Fight Against Fascism. He's also a veteran, and he is in New Jersey. Tom, please introduce yourself.
What's up? Tom from Jersey, Fight Against Fascism here. What's good? What's good? Army 2009, Iraq. How we doing?
Tom has pre-warned us that he is on a lot of fucking caffeine, so we might mute him throughout this motherfucker. Just so y'all know.
Man is here, man.
That right there. And then last, I would like to welcome our good friend Carl. He is the CEO of his own place, which I will let him talk about, but he is also our media director and he is in North Carolina as well.
Hey everyone, I'm Carl Abel. I am the CEO, founder of Cranbox Politics, and the media director for 5051 Veterans. I am a 20-year Marine Corps veteran, originally from California, transplanted permanently to the wonderful state of North Carolina, despite the fact that North Carolina is on the list of the gerrymandering effort. So happy to be here and excited to talk about this very important issue, especially in the political trying times that we are in today.
Absolutely. I'm glad that everybody can make this one. This one's super important, especially with everything going on after the SCOTUS decision. And then most of us live in the Southeast and we have seen all of this. But I would love to hear from Jamil. So for viewers unfamiliar with Black Voters Matter, what work are you doing on the ground that people don't see? Like, can you explain your organization and like what you're doing out there?
Absolutely. So I feel like I should give you a quick peek into the things that I just do on like a day-to-day basis, and especially with this week and the recent actions that have been happening within the last couple of months. We are in the process of planning out an amazing action that's going to be going on in Montgomery, Alabama on Saturday, May the 16th. It's called All Roads Lead to the South, because the big bulk of this partisan as well as racial gerrymandering actions that are going on with the state legislatures across the country is primarily happening within the South. And so we've been sitting with other organizations nationwide, coordinating these efforts. I'm literally on the ground on a day-to-day basis, making sure our partners that we have here in the state of Florida are able to find adequate transportation to Montgomery if they want to go to Montgomery. We also here in the state of Florida are going to be having an additional action on Friday morning in Tallahassee, Florida at the state capitol around these same issues, but also making sure that we center the fact that the state legislature is attempting to not only silence Black voters through these gerrymandered maps, but also silencing Black voices within our state legislature, with our elected officials, and also just simply silencing Black voices through the actions that they are doing and attempting to break down the very fabric of political and organizing power within the state.
Yeah, I know Black Voters Matter has done an immense amount of work in the state of Florida over the last 10 years. And so I wanted to kind of get into the historical context of what's happening here, right? I don't know if you can see behind me, but I have the book, The New Jim Crow. I have a whole book on this subject. It's Color of the Law. I have a whole library on this subject. I married a woman with a PhD in communication with a DEI specificity. So this was her area of expertise. And so I like to think I'm well versed, but Jamil, every time I hear you give a speech, I'm like, oh, I'm dumb as fuck. Like you always say something and I'm like, wait, what? And so I do want to kind of bring in some historical background to how we got here, why we're here, things of that nature, right? And so for me, I want to start at Jim Crow. Right, the Jim Crow era. So after Reconstruction, Southern states used multiple systems to reduce Black political participation. That included literacy tests, poll taxes, grandfather clauses, terror, things of that nature, right? And so, let's start there at Jim Crow era and then go forward. So we had Jim Crow, and correct me if I'm wrong, the fix to Jim Crow was the Voting Rights Act.
Yes. So The fix to Jim Crow are the three, I like to call them the diversity, equity, and inclusion laws or acts. We have your 1964 Civil Rights Act, you have your 1965 Voting Rights Act, and we have the 1968 Fair Housing Act. I am looking at Katie's immense bookshelf, immense yet tiny bookshelf on her desk right now. The Color of Law is a book that is on there, and it eloquently explains the reasoning behind needing a 1968 Fair Housing Act, and that redlining was and still is, but let's not get that confused, still is the law of the land in most areas here in the United States of America. And the reason that I say it's still the law of the land is because a lot of times when city council or county commissions, especially within the South, want to utilize who's supposed to get the big bulk of resources within areas in their city or in their county, they are still using redlining maps. And they are still using those maps to identify which places get what type of resources. Many areas that were redlined during Jim Crow era, during the era before FDR came in with the New Deal. Many of those areas that were redlined during that particular time period, in this particular era, those particular places still face food deserts. Those particular places still face inadequate education. Those particular places still face high presence from police departments and law enforcement. And so that's what we're looking at. Going back to the situation in which you explained with Jim Crow, yes, we had so many things going on during that particular time period. You have your literacy tax, you have your, like, there was literally a test that you had to take in Alabama where they put a big jar of jelly beans on the table, and you literally had to count how many jelly beans were in the jar without touching the jelly beans. And if you got it correct, that would be an indicator of whether or not they would allow you, not even to just vote, but simply to register to vote. But even if you got the jelly bean test correct, they're gonna always push the goalpost back even more. And so in that particular within that particular situation, of course, we get Montgomery bus boycott. We also get various other actions that are going on across the South. We get Freedom Summer. We get the acts that were portrayed in Mississippi Burning, to where we get to the point of 63 March on Washington, and talks and rumblings from President Kennedy of wanting to sign and put into law what eventually becomes the 1964 Civil Rights Act before his untimely assassination a few months after the March on Washington. Lyndon B. Johnson comes in. He becomes the president that signs into law the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And then after the Civil Rights Act, he wanted to shift to what he affectionately decided would be known as the War on Poverty. Dr. King and many other organizers within the country did not want to shift to that. They wanted to shift over to voting rights and making sure that the right to vote that was already given to us with the 15th Amendment And the three amendments that I like to call the post-Civil War Reconstruction Amendments of the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment. Side note, there's a nice little state house representative in Alabama who has been on record this week as stating that he would like to see the 14th Amendment be put up to question after all of the things that have occurred with Louisiana versus Calais and these gerrymandered maps being put into place. He now states that he wants to see if the Supreme Court will do a hearing or a bidding on the 14th Amendment, which is birthright citizenship. And the only reason that birthright citizenship is even needed in the United States of America is because you had a whole bunch of individuals that you stole from Africa, made them into slaves, and now you got all of these people that are roaming your country that you don't know what to do with them. So you have to put in place the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. But now you want to see if you can put that into question in the books with the United States Supreme Court. So again, because I know I'm all over the place, we go back to 1965 Voting Rights Act and how we get to the Voting Rights Act. And of course, we all know that's Selma, that's Bloody Sunday, that's all the things that happened on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. If you've seen the movie Selma, it's a semi-accurate account of everything that went down on the Edmund Pettus Bridge that Hollywood would allow. But the actual accounts of it are even worse than what was portrayed within the film. But then you still have, because you have during that particular time period, people like John Lewis, Diane Nash, Dr. King, many other individuals, C.T. Vivian, that were very instrumental in making the 1965 Voting Rights Act become law. And so there are two key measures that we want to bring up within the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act and Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act was tested during the Obama administration with a case affectionately known as Shelby v. Holder. Shelby v. Holder, the Supreme Court decided to rule that the measures within Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act should not guarantee an unequal playing field as it pertains to how people are able to be effective voters within their states in this country. The moment Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act is essentially gutted, that's when we start to see all of these voter suppression bills and voter suppression laws being passed in states across the country, many of them which, of course, are in the South. Here in the state of Florida, as we all know, we faced immense voter suppression bills, immense ways that they keep us from even registering people to vote, as well as how we're able to collect petitions for citizen ballot initiatives that we place on our ballots during elections. And now we get to 2025, going into 2026. We have, of course, as we all know, every 10 years we have the census, and then a few years or so later after the census, maybe like a year or two after the census, is when we start getting into realignment of maps. Louisiana decides that they want to essentially have 2 Democratic districts within their state, which has in total 6 districts. Pete Calais Pete Calais, who is a known election denier, who is a known individual that was at January 6th, is the plaintiff in the Louisiana versus Calais case. That is who we're dealing with as the individual whose case essentially went all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. And in a 6-3 decision, his case is the case that guts significant measures in Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act in plain English is you have to, states that are known states for racial gerrymandering and partisan gerrymandering have to get clearance from the federal government on their maps before those maps officially become the maps of their land. When Section 2 gets completely gutted, now we're effectively seeing states across the South put into place maps that you can't claim them to be racial gerrymandering because that's no longer a thing that can be spoken of through the Louisiana versus Calais decision. And if you want to say that these maps are partisan gerrymandered, you have to now defend the intent behind the map and not the effect. It's no longer the effect of the map, it's now the intent behind what was behind why they decided to make the maps the way that they are. And that's how we got to where we are. Lay her down right quick, but I'm coming right back. I'm just gonna...
Sam.
So, in listening and kind of digging into this gerrymandering thing, another really insidious part of not only having to prove the intent, but you actually have to provide maps that still achieve the partisan goal, right? So even if you say this map is racially gerrymandered, you have to still provide them. You now have to make an ungerrymandered map for them to use that achieves the same goals. And that to me is just mind-blowingly frustrating, right? And so, South Carolina had a very similar case come up, and I think it was the NAACP versus South Carolina. But I mean, in that one, they determined that it wasn't a racial gerrymander, but they're still going back to change it. So it's like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. I mean, it's a problem, and we have to fight it, and we have to fix it now. If they're gonna do it now, I think we have to fight it now. But in you saying that, I just wanted to throw that extra piece out there that you have to give them a map that does the same shit, just not racial.
Mm-hmm. And so much since the decision for Louisiana versus Calais, since the Louisiana versus Calais decision has come down, we've heard from so many state legislatures across the South about how they're making sure that their maps that they create are race neutral maps. But at the same time, the maps that you already had in place in most of these states across the South were already race neutral to begin with, long before we get to the space of mid-decade redistricting. I can speak for the Florida maps. The Florida maps, despite the fact that those maps scream racial gerrymandering, by standards for most other state legislatures across the South, would still be considered a quote unquote race neutral map. This, even despite the fact of the original map for the state of Florida placed the Republican Party at having 20 congressional districts, while the Democratic Party only sat at having 8 congressional districts. You also took out a key majority minority district with that map, with Congressional District 4, the district that stretched from Leon County to huge parts of Duval County, because one, that district was a district that was protected by the 1965 Voting Rights Act. And that district was also a district that was the result of a 2010 ballot initiative here in the state of Florida that's known as the Fair Districts Amendment. That ballot initiative in 2010 was voted in favor by 63.2% of Floridians across the state. Two key things in that ballot initiative is your maps cannot be drawn from a racial perspective, or from a partisan perspective, or a perspective where you are showing favoritism to an incumbent representative. Both maps, the 2022 maps and these current maps that just got passed the same day that the Louisiana versus Calais decision came down, both maps are clear violations of the partisan gerrymandering perspective of the Fair Districts Amendment. But Governor DeSantis's argument is that because of the fact that Louisiana versus Calais eliminates the racial gerrymandering perspective of the Fair Districts Amendment, that it cancels out everything else that's in the Fair Districts Amendment, including the partisan gerrymandering perspective, because that's his argument. We don't have to live by the partisan gerrymandering because both intents are displayed within the Fair Districts Amendment. And I see Carl.
Yeah, so this is I'm learning a lot right now, and I thought I did my research, which is terrifying and also great, because I thought that I was good at researching, but I'm not. But what I really want to do is I kind of want to put a pause and explain to the vets who are watching why this is important. And I think that it's immensely significant because of the fact that, statistically speaking, 69% of all Black veterans live in the South, specifically in the regions that are affected by the Calais decision. So essentially what is going on right now with Louisiana declaring their state of emergency so they can redraw the maps, South Carolina rushing to redraw the maps, Georgia rushing to redraw the maps, all of these things are being done in order to take away not just Black American voices and representation, but it's also significantly impacting Black veterans who fought overseas for our rights to vote, who fought overseas for our First Amendment rights, who fought overseas alongside every single one of us who are not part of the BIPOC community, and they are the ones that are getting hit the hardest. So the question about why does this matter to veterans? Well, folks, listen, it's disproportionately affecting Black veterans. That's why it should matter, and that's why veterans should be part of this conversation.
So I want to caveat off of that. I've done a lot of research into voter turnout among our community, right? And we have the highest turnout of voters, right? Like veterans, we normally turn out at like 90 to 95%, right? And so, and when you think about the military in general, And I'm gonna take a really quick side quest, Jamil. But if you think about the military in general, like we recruit in BIPOC communities and immigrant communities heavily. Okay, like it is very, very heavy. Like I know when I was in as enlisted as an NCO, like there wasn't really a lot of white women around, right? And that's cool, right? Because it I learned a lot. But like let's call it what it is. If you want the veteran vote, because we are a massive voting bloc in the country, we're 6.2% of the vote. We tend to lean conservative in our voting, right? And in our belief systems until we become educated. And we've primarily vote Republican. If you look at 65% last election voted for Trump, right? So like that's how it works out. But when you think about what Carl just said, right? Like you have this large population of BIPOC veteran and military community that are now being disenfranchised. And often, not often enough, I should say, not often enough do veterans actually get involved in the election, like voting discussion, right? It's really not, we stay away from politics in general, like veterans and military members. But when you think about what happened after World War One, right? Like let's talk about like some dark fucking history here. World War One, black veterans came back and then they were fucking lynched in their uniforms in Mississippi, in the South, right? And then World War II happened. Black veterans were sent, and we all like probably saw the Triple Eight, or like we all like that movie. But let's talk about the actual veterans on the front lines, right? Like they were segregated, they were not in the same units, and then when they came back, they couldn't even fucking vote, right? They couldn't even fucking vote in our elections. And then during Vietnam, we had to go to the fucking Supreme Court to make sure that we stopped sending black soldiers to the front lines because we sent them first to be murdered. And so we have this long, dark history within our own ranks of fucking disenfranchising each other. Right? Like there's white supremacy within our own fucking ranks. So we have to go to the Supreme Court to make sure we stop fucking killing black people within the military, right? And we don't fucking talk about that shit enough, like within our community of our own dark history, within the veteran community, within the military community, right? Is like, let's talk about voting. But we have our own fucking right dark history of like lynching people that came back with medals and not letting them vote until the fucking Voting Rights Act. Like that is so insanely absurd to me that we had people serving this country in two separate fucking world wars and they could not vote. Jamil, you're on silent.
I think I also want to touch on two other key things as well. One, the fact that during both World War II as well as Vietnam War, you hear stories from black soldiers and black veterans about how they come home and they're watching their non-black counterparts receive GI Bill acceptance, receive housing loan acceptance, and they couldn't even get those things. Yet they're getting lynched. But those that aren't getting lynched aren't receiving the necessary benefits that they need as veterans to even live post giving their lives to the military. That's one key thing I do want to touch on. The other key thing I want to touch on is knowing and understanding that in most areas of the South, Black people aren't living a lot of times within the metropolitan areas in the South. They're living within the rural areas of the South. A lot of your Black farmers, that's where they are in the South, within the rural areas. Doing my research when I first started working as an organizer for Black Voters Matter, for the top 10 counties with the highest concentration of Black people within the state of Florida, there's only 2 counties that aren't in North Florida in the top 10. And those counties are Broward County and Orange County. Every other county is in North Florida, and most of those counties are our rural counties. The number one county with the highest concentration of Black people within the state of Florida is Gaston County. That's where you have your Quincy and Quincy, Florida, and Tued, Florida, and Gretna, Florida. It's literally right there in Gaston County. We deal, as Black Voters Matter, we deal with a lot of Black farmers within Gaston County. And I'm bringing this up because when you take out in 2022, when you take out CD4, CD4 starts not in Tallahassee, it starts significantly in areas of Gaston County all the way down to Duval County. So most of the counties within the middle of I-10 for the state of Florida, getting to the east end of I-10, which is Duval County, most of those counties are rural counties. So you're knocking out not just only a significant portion of Black representation, you're knocking out a significant portion of rural representation by doing this. And as we all know, congressional districts, when you look at those maps, you're not only looking at those maps just for representation, you're looking at those maps for resource allocation. And so by breaking up those particular districts, you're now breaking up where the resources should adequately be going for people within this state and many other states in the South. And if you don't have a person that's going to significantly advocate for you as your congressperson up in DC on where the resources should properly go, that's how you're faced with Black farmers having to sue the USDA because they're being given placebo seeds instead of actual seeds for the crops that they grow every year.
So in our general chat with all the other veterans, we've had conversations about representation on multiple occasions. And I have been one of those individuals. I'm a gay man. And when I look at my representative, I'll tell you, my representative, Greg Murphy, is a full-on red hat wearing MAGA bootlicker, right? And he does a pretty good job of representing his fellow bootlickers here in this district. And I'm in a deep red district. But when I say representing them, I mean like he represents the loyalty to Trump, not the loyalty to his district and what it needs. And so my initial response to like the making sure that we have a representative who represents me was, I don't want a gay representative to represent the gay community, to represent me on the national stage, right? Like I want someone who's going to represent the district as a whole. If I mean, I'm probably one of the minority within the district as far as being a gay man. And so I don't think that is something that should have undue influence. But I also recognize that there are representatives out there from like San Francisco who are going to be more apt or more prone to represent that LGBT voice when it comes to that. And so that was my initial stance. However, I'm slowly starting to come around to some ideas of how we change that. And the reason for that is because after Calais, I sat here and I watched all of these states run to their legislatures and try to overturn their electoral map so they could get rid of the minority majority districts. Again, my first reaction as a white man with my privilege, I looked at those majority minority districts and thought to myself, those districts are a form of segregation. That's how I looked at them, because it was literally cramming the minority communities into a district. I didn't see it as giving them a voice because they were crammed into a district and they only had one person. But when I actually sat back and thought about it, you're right, the resources. How are they going to get someone who understands their needs? And so as I evaluated that and I came to understand that, it started to dawn on me that there's a significant importance to having that representative who represents the people within the district. I still think that it's a responsibility of the voter to be smart and vote based off of their own beliefs and make sure that they're doing their due diligence before they go into the polling booth. But I also think that the VRA and the loss of the VRA is a significant blow to us as Americans, but also to the minority population, which I'll say is going to be a massive negative when the white population is no longer the majority population in the United States. And then all of a sudden, the white population is going to realize that they no longer have the voice and they can't do the things. And if the VRA gets stripped, now they really have nothing to lean on. So all of a sudden, the one thing that they were trying to tamp down on is going to get used against them in quieting their voice, right? I'm not saying that that's a thing that's going to happen, but that's if you look at the second and third order effects, those are things that could eventually arise, and those are problems that could happen. And so these people that are getting rid of these things aren't thinking about those second and third order effects and ensuring that we have equal representation, regardless of race, at Congress. I mean, Congress as a whole, if you look at their makeup right now, the racial makeup, they don't really represent the population and the racial population, the ethnic population of the United States, because it's predominantly white men. And so looking at it from that perspective, I kind of looked up a little bit on the Cook Political Report. And since the Calais decision, the Cook Political Report has changed their assessment and has deemed 18 of the 435 seats that are up for grabs this year as competitive. The rest of them are either solid or lean Democrat or Republican, which is a massive problem because the American people aren't getting a decision because the politicians are choosing who the fuck they want to vote for them. And like, what are we doing, and why is this happening? I guess that's my question to you, Jamil, is why do we keep slipping backwards? Why do you see this happening? Because I mean, you spent more time in Florida in the South than I have. I'm from California. And so I like to think that California is a little bit more progressive in that aspect. We have had our problems, but I did not see this level of just terrible decision making happening over there that I do see happening in the South.
So while the country has seemingly looked as though it has shifted, many of our state legislatures within the South has remained very conservative leaning and very aligned to party and partisan politics instead of being concerned about the causes of the people. So with the 2022 maps that happened here in the state of Florida, Black Voters Matter, along with Equal Ground Education Fund, Legal Women Voters for the state of Florida, and Florida Rising, we were involved in a lawsuit. And the first portion of that lawsuit was an injunction hearing that we did to essentially make sure that they could not use the maps that they had drawn for the 2022 election. Eventually went all the way up to the highest appellate court in the state before they sided with the governor and his cronies. But the first judge that looked at the injunction case was Judge Mark Walker, and I'm literally paraphrasing, but every time I do this paraphrase, everybody tells me, yeah, it's a paraphrase, but you hit it word for word. Judge Mark Walker essentially said in his statement, where he ruled in favor of Black Voters Matter and all of the other organizations that I named, that this has been a 20+ year systemic attack on Black voters in the state of Florida. He didn't say voters of color. He didn't say marginalized voters. He was very intentional in saying that it was a 20+ year attack on Black voters in the state of Florida around voter suppression and gerrymandering of maps in the area. But if you look at everywhere else in the South, it's been that same. It's been the law of the land everywhere else in the South. Egregious voter suppression laws, figuring out ways to make sure that some of these states with high concentration of black people living in their state, the number one state with the highest concentration of black people living in the state is Mississippi, with close to 34-35%. Yet there are very few congressional members in the Mississippi congressional delegation that are black. Louisiana, in the history of the Louisiana congressional delegation, there have only been 4 congresspeople that have been black. In the congressional delegation's history for the state of Louisiana. And now you set in place a 2 majority minority district, and now they're on the verge of losing one of those districts.
Yeah, Jamil, God, thank you so much for being here. I've learned so much, man. I really appreciate it, dude. Yeah, I mean, first I want to, while you're talking, I looked at the District 4 within Florida, like just the map, the congressional district map of Florida. Yeah, so I live in the Northeast, right? So it's always wild to me when I look at another congressional map of another state. And man, it has been wild looking at the South, dude. Specifically Florida. Like, I mean, I get our states up here are small, but that District 4 is like the size of Rhode Island, like 2 Rhode Islands, I swear to God, right? It's like a large swath. And I was stationed in Pensacola, so I know that area, man. I've been up by there, bro, right? I know where that is. Blows my mind. The other thing that I kind of want to, mention is just that you brought up, and this just, it fucking blows my mind every time I think about it. As veterans, supposedly we take this oath to the Constitution, right? I myself, I'm, left of the Democratic Party, and I'm a proud card-carrying member of the DSA, right? Whatever that should mean, but, I'm very progressive, right? That being said, I am the anomaly. But I agree with my brothers and sisters on the call, and most, at least their stated, intentions of, we take an oath to uphold the Constitution. You have the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th Amendment. The Supreme Court, what they did in this ruling on VRA, in my opinion, all but spits all over the 15th Amendment. An all but name. Like, that's what it does. They might have well, in my opinion, they might as well have just legislative, which is illegal, by the way, due to separation of powers. They might as well have legislated away the 15th Amendment. That is what they should have done. That's what this looks like to me when I look at it. And what does that mean? I know we talked about it, right? Look, we've all worn those of us that have been in deployment, we've worn the uniform. We've seen, obviously, the racist assholes on deployment. We've seen the racist assholes when we're in. We've also seen a lot of times, though, when we're there in the shit, the majority of the folks, we don't necessarily give a fuck, man. Or at least that was my experience. Right? And you're not going to care if the space is on fire. You're not going to care the color of the skin of the guy that's pulling you out of there. Right? You just want to get pulled out. Right? If the shit hits the fan, you're not caring what color their skin is next to you. You're caring, are they going to be able to handle business? Right? That's all you care about, dude. And then for those people to come back, and not only, I'm not even just talking, disgusting what happened to our brothers and sisters after World War I, World War II, and Vietnam, frankly, right? But looking at now, the post 9/11 veterans, the OEF, OIF veterans, that's my group, right? These people coming back now to face what we're facing, to see what the black and brown brothers and sisters in the South are having to deal with essentially saying your voice doesn't matter. By the way, democracy is a lie in the United States of America. It is not the people that pick the politicians, it is the politicians that pick the people. So much so to the fact that it's not even about districts anymore with me. Like, that's a massive issue. But you have, within North Carolina, someone said in the chat, throwing out 64,000 votes, mail-in ballots, right? Because they didn't align with what the GOP wanted. So that goes even a step beyond redistricting at that point. That's just saying you've already voted. We're still throwing it out. We don't give a shit. Right? And if you don't think this is a problem because you might not be a part of the affected group, and I'll end with this, you want to look at a few concepts of who's actually picking these people, right? And this goes back to this resource allocation or even just legislation. It's not, the average worker that's picking these people. Right? It's billionaires that are doing this to make themselves richer. They don't give a shit about the farmers. They don't give a shit about rural America. I'm initially from Oklahoma, so I definitely from the reservation. I absolutely know what it looks like to live in a very resource poor area where you're not getting resources from the United States of America. Yeah, Carl is saying something that he stole my idea, so I'm really stoked now to hear what he has to say. But honestly, for me, I'll end with this. It's I'm super grateful for you to be here, Jamil. I thought I did a lot of reading on this by looking at Louisiana versus Calais, the VRA, what's been going on in Tennessee, what's going on in Alabama, the history, but just hearing you and your work that you've been facing on the ground, and it's still going on. That's the thing that pisses me off, right? The things you're dealing with today on the ground. It's Jim Crow 2.0, man. That's what we're dealing with. And what's at stake is the American democracy. That is what's at stake. And everybody needs to be out there fighting. Thank you so much, Jamil, by the way, for being here, man.
Thank you, and I appreciate it. And I also want to touch on a few key points that we face with this Louisiana versus Calais decision. Combined with Republicans' mid-decade gerrymandering in states already like Texas and Missouri and here in Florida, because as I stated before, the Louisiana versus Calais decision came down the exact same day that we were doing a special session around mid-decade redistricting. A ruling gutting Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act could help the GOP secure an additional 27 U.S. House safe Republican seats when compared to the current maps, at least 19 directly tied to the loss of Section 2. That's enough to lock in one-party control of the U.S. House. And if we get real locked down to where it's two-thirds representation by one party, then what could occur within the next 2 years? They're pretty much filibuster proof. So they could call for a constitutional convention. And if they call for a constitutional convention, then what happens? We could face the current individual that's in the White House right now being able to possibly serve a third term as president of the United States. Because without Section 2, you have up to 25 to 30% of the Congressional Black Caucus and up to 10 to 15% of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus losing their seats if many of these maps go into place.
So I see, so our vice president is in the public chat. And I'm glad that you brought this up because we're weird and we're veterans and we have a conspiracy theory chat. And and I put this in there today of what if the goal is to change the Constitution right here? Because the 2/3 and then the majority, and I am a math person, right? Because I'm clearly fucking autistic. And so I was doing the math And the math as it sits doesn't reach the 2/3 threshold, right? They're still like a few seats short of 2/3. However, if they somehow manage to get other states outside of the Southeast, right, like to redistrict for more, like let's go like Wyoming or like non like historical like things that do shit, right, as they could. And so it's funny that you brought this up because I put it in our conspiracy theory chat today of like, what if this is the goal is to get the third term and Steve Bannon has been out here being like, yeah, we're not fucking worried about it. Like he's going to get the third term. And like none of us have thought about that, right? Like I saw, and Lisa's watching. I follow like a conspiracy theory lady that sometimes has really good ideas that I'm like, that's feasible. I mean, Jamel, you live in Florida. We've been talking about Gerald the dolphin now for a few months in the conspiracy theory chat. Um, and so, you know, like that's the big what if. What if that is the actual goal here is to change the Constitution so that they do stay in power? And you know, I know we're closing out the. Oh, Logan wants to know about the dolphin. So before we, side note, okay, so there's a dolphin named Gerald apparently that kidnaps humans, forces them to build structures underwater, and then deposit them on the beach. And then Florida happened to go on a killing spree of bottlenose dolphins, which makes this even more feasible. And then another scientist came out and said that it happened to him years ago. So and it's Florida. Like I live in Florida. I'm a native. It's feasible. Weird shit happens here.
Very much so. It is.
Like, as Floridians, we're like, yeah, this is kind of doable. And like, all non-Floridians are like, what the fuck? And we're like, yeah, seems legit.
Yeah, I mean,
But
non-Floridians
before
be
we
looking at us like we're
close,
crazy. Non-Floridians be
I
looking at
know.
us like we're crazy in most cases, but we're like, so it's a lot of stuff that goes on here that for us it's just like, it's a Tuesday.
All right. So before we, yeah, Lisa just commented, Gerald sigh. So before we close out this hour, I do want to kind of answer what Carl asked, right? Is like, why is this happening in the South? Like, why did this happen, right? So from a white woman's perspective, right? I grew up privileged. I grew up in a very conservative home. Why is this happening? White fucking supremacy. That's why, right? Is that if you, and Jamil talked about it a little bit on the farming aspect, right? The districts that they're actually redistricting is the Cotton Belt. And so when people are like, oh man, why are they doing this? It's the Cotton Belt because after slavery fucking ended, those districts went Democrat because they didn't want to be fucking slaves. So historically, they have all voted Democrat in this very specific line, and you can look this up. It's called the Cotton Belt, right? What are the districts that are being fucking redone? The Cotton Belt. Because they're tired of these very specific districts that all happen to be minority majority districts, but they're all Cotton Belt fucking districts, right? And so as a Southern white woman that like grew up here, grew up in like the white supremacy type of people around me, that's why. Because we never fucking fixed it and we never held people accountable after slavery, right? Like, so now you see this administration, like, yeah, we're talking about voting, right? But let's talk about the Department of fucking Education. The whole existence of the Department of Education was to make sure that black fucking students weren't discriminated against. And what did they do? They fucking are dismantling the Department of Education. So, like, that's what it's all about, Carl, as someone from California, is the South thinks, the white fucking supremacists of the South literally think we will rise again at some fucking point. I went to a Confederate like reenactment because I'm a history buff. Um, out in the forest out there off of I-10, wherever that is, Jamil. And I'm literally walking through this fucking reenactment with my wife, who's now my ex. But This old woman is standing with her grandson and was like, "Don't worry, the South will rise again." And I immediately said, "No, the fuck we won't. No, we won't." And it was a historically inaccurate reenactment because I knew the fucking history of the battle. And they said in the reenactment that the Confederates won. I knew the Union fucking won the battle because I'm a history buff. And so as they're doing this reenactment, I'm like, this is not fucking true. Like, this is not true. And so you see it in the South. I see it in my friends. I saw it in my teachers. I see it in my family, unfortunately. It is white fucking supremacy because they are so afraid that they're going to lose power. So they are going to dilute the vote. They are going to fucking do away with education and push out BIPOC brothers and sisters in the South. We've been fucking doing it for years, but now they have the administration that can fucking do it and is willing to. Because as Carl said, like, when Carl called me on my bullshit, and when I was like, why did you change parties? Because I'm a registered Republican. And he said, yeah, I'm not going to fucking be a part of a party that's like the KKK and racists and Nazis. Like, I just can't fucking do it. And I went, yeah, you're right. Right? Because my party, the party I grew up with, I fucking believed in, at some point, like, after the Voting Rights Act, like, and you saw the Dixiecrats switch parties, and the history of the fucking Republican Party was at some point, this is all going to be undone.
So there are two key pieces, and I know we have to move on. There are two key documents, if you will, or moments. I'll call them moments. Two key moments after the passing of 64 Civil Rights Act, 65 Voting Rights Act, 68 Fair Housing Act. The Powell Memorandum is a key moment. The Powell Memorandum comes within 68, 69. The Powell Memorandum pretty much is the blueprint for neoliberalism in this country. The Powell Memorandum is essentially Project 2025 before Project 2025. It literally lists out everything that they're looking, that conservatives, neoconservatives, and neoliberals were looking to do. Takeover of media, elimination of the Department of Education, elimination of public broadcasting, it literally listed all within the Powell Memorandum. The next piece, of course, is Lee Atwater and his recording that was leaked during the Reagan administration around the Southern strategy that shifts Dixiecrats over to the Republican Party. I'm probably the only person on this call that can pretty much say this word, so I'll go ahead and say it as well as I can. Lee Atwater pretty much states, well, we can't say ninja anymore, but we all know what ninja is. Thanks, Logan. We can't say ninja anymore. So what do? We now say stuff like forced busing. We now say stuff like increase in taxes. It gets to the point where we start saying these things, but everyone else knows these are dog whistles for Black. To the point where we start pointing out the welfare queens. To the point where we start pointing out increased public safety. I am literally saying things that are key components that will affect Black communities across the country, but it disproportionately affects Black communities across the South. Because we still live, even in 2026, we still live with the mindset of there are these groups, there's this big, huge group of people that live in the country that we didn't have any idea of what we were going to do with these group of people after the Civil War ended and Reconstruction started to begin. And in 2026, we still don't know what we're going to do with these group of people. And what makes it worse is that these group of people have now started interacting in a way with white people that we didn't imagine for them that they would interact with, to the point where it's not even 2040 anymore. By the time we get to the next census, white people will be the minority in this country. And that's what brings the fear to them, which is why they start these institutions to enact this false sense of power that they have over us. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
We're glad to be at your TED Talk. And I think it is such a wonderful way to close out this part of the show. I know I have learned a lot. I know everybody on this panel has probably learned a lot. And so in the second hour, it's more lighthearted, veteran style shit. So our first thing is Carl led. So Carl, take it away.
Do we want to do the fire for effect, or do we want to do Sam's field report?
You can do Sam's field report first if you'd like. Sam.
I got some
seriousness
background
out of the way.
noise. No, I mean, I got some background noise going. Kids finishing something up. So if you want to go with yours, that'll be good.
Okay.
Okay, Carl.
Well, in that case, we'll go with fire for effect. So I've got two big ones, and if we have time, we want to push, we can add a third. But I'll share the first one with you. Just bear with me. And I am hesitant to read this one. This was this was a response to Logan's call to action for the Selma event. And it was by a man by the name of Matthew Zarate, who said, another would-be yard boss working hard to keep Massa DNC's property in their place. This is the all caps actual institutionalized racism. They don't even realize the Crow Project is still in effect. Now the DNC has them fighting to stay on their plantations, never trying to be anything other than property or yard bosses. The slave masters only made two changes. They moved the collar from the neck to the mind, and they started putting them on everybody in their farms, regardless of color. They've been reinforcing the black man's place since the 1840s. This is the longest lasting PSYOP in U.S. history.
I can't see the cartoon, to be honest. I mean, I don't know what's going on down there.
Hang on. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I didn't pull this, but essentially what it is it looks like it's a successful black man with the Christian cross, golden cross around his neck, his daughter in his arm holding the Bible, his wife holding the sign that says family first, and another sign off to the side that says Christian conservative family man, successful, owns a business, pays taxes, love the United States, and then off to the on the left it's he can't be black if he votes red, which is the narrative, and then another one that says successful Christian conservative patriot does not compute, which is it's depicting an angry black woman, and then CNN down on the bottom right.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's like this, right? Like I said, man, I'm originally from Oklahoma. Needless to say, not known for being very fucking liberal down there. I have, black family members. I come from a mixed family. I'm from the reservation. I have known whatever you want to call it, black conservatives. I've served with people that consider themselves conservatives that are also black and brown. And I also served with a lot of people that would call themselves conservatives that were black and brown that fucking hate Donald Trump and what is going on right now. Right. So whatever it is, I mean, also like, look at this Matthew Zarate, like without even a fucking profile picture. I mean, look, this clown's A is probably a fucking bot. B, most likely some rando fucking white kid. Right. Even if that's not the case, the way I'm looking at it is this. I don't care if someone voted for Donald Trump or not and what the color of their skin is. I don't even necessarily care if they voted for Donald Trump per se. What I care about is if you continue to push the evil policies that are going on right now. That's what I care about. Irrespective of any other moniker that is either actual or self-ascribed, it doesn't matter to me. And then the other thing is that kills me about this, that let's look at that cross real quick. Do you know how much work the black faith leaders have done for the civil rights movement of this fucking country, bro? That they continue to do, that they're doing right now, that are leading, by the way, that are leading the march in fucking Selma this weekend? And you're going to post some ignorant shit like that, bro. Come on, get the fuck out of here with your culture wars, man. I'm not trying to play that game, play into that tribalism, And then it's also funny talking about the DNC. My guy, I fought against the DNC. Like, I worked for the Bernie campaign in 2016, right? Proud member of DSA. Do you know how many times I've had to fight against the DNC? Like, these people are clowns. They equate automatically. I do not like Trump, therefore I am DNC. If anything, I'm pro people, man. That's what I am, pro working class people. Even if you're a part of that class and you don't believe in it. So it just blows my mind. It's also just disrespectful. Like I see, especially when I've seen that cross, I'm in with this. I see that cross, and to me, I'm not Christian, by the way. To me, that spits in the face and is extremely disrespectful to the black and brown faith leaders that I have stood next to during this movement and previous movements, whether it was BLM, whether it was Occupy, whether it was now, what we're doing, coming up on Saturday. This spits in the face of that, in my opinion. So yeah, that's all I got on that.
I want to tack on something before we go to the next one. As a white woman that's a registered Republican, who is a parliamentarian for the local GOP, I can assure you that Republican black men in local GOP circles are not well respected as you think they are. They are used as tokens to get votes. How do I know this? I speak from personal experience. Jamil will recognize the name as soon as I say it. I was used as the token gay conservative combat vet to get Lenny Curry elected. As soon as he was elected, I was called the gay Gestapo in an open meeting as their parliamentarian. So don't think that just because they're black and Republican, that the GOP loves them. Because if you look at the policy and you look at the legislation that is being done by the party, it certainly shows that they don't give a fuck about anybody but white, Christian, specifically Protestant Christian men, because I'm a Catholic. My entire family is Catholic, and apparently being Catholic is not good enough. So you have to be a part of this Protestant evangelical Christian church. So it's not the Democrat Party either. The Republicans also hate black people within their own party. And I feel like this picture is supposed to show Byron. Byron is a black man running for governor in the state of Florida who cheated on his wife, married another woman, is completely corrupt and bought by corporate interests and the Israel lobby. So if you're going to uplift Black Republican men, please make sure that they're not bought and paid for, because I can reassure you, Matthew, that you are probably one of my friends, my white Christian male friends, that are poor as fuck out here supporting a party that doesn't give a shit about you. They're making money for each other right now. They don't give zero fucks about you, my guy. Jamil.
Very quick, very quick and touching, very quick and touching on this. There is a statement that we like to say when it comes to tokens, especially if you are especially if you are an individual who bought into the tokenism. Eventually, tokens get spent. Eventually, they get spent, and and a lot of these Black Republicans that are serving in the space of tokenism are going to find that out pretty soon, especially Byron Donalds, John James out of Michigan, Wesley Hunt out of Texas, and Burgess Owens out of Utah. As of May 26, all four of them are currently serving in the U.S. House of Representatives, but they are leaving their seats after 2026 midterms. Some of them are running for other things in office. One of the four is actually retiring and resigning from said seat. Wesley Hunt has stated that for him, it doesn't matter if there's any Black Republicans that are serving in Congress, because that's the thing that we shouldn't care about. We should care about whether or not the right person is serving in that seat in Congress. And personally, Mr. Wesley Hunt, I agree with you, because you're one of those people that when the Donald Trump video came out of Barack and Michelle Obama, former president and first lady of the United States, being shown as the monkeys, you said that you didn't think that that's what Donald Trump was doing on his little Truth Social page. You just were like, it was all Democrats that were being represented as characters of the Lion King, even though there wasn't any monkeys in the Lion King. But see, I digress, because I don't really do well with Black Republicans, and Katie knows that all too well. So I'll just yield my time.
So our last one is more than just a singular comment. It's actually a string of it's a conversation. Same thing. This happened again on Logan's post, because Logan seems to draw the commenters. But this one, the very first comment, and this is the one that I lead with, is from Lewin Burrell Jr., who has a beautiful bird, by the way, but says what it means is that all Americans is equal no matter what color you are. And this is talking about the destruction of the VRA and its ramifications. I mean, if you go through and you read through the comments, there's a whole bunch of people that sort of like keep telling yourself that, tell them that they're lying. And then Rita Nieto says that's not correct. If one has to cheat to win, where is the victory? Talking about the fact that Republicans are literally cheating. And then there's Levi Lino, who said that's not what it means at all. Lewin replied to them, thank God, because there needed to be a response. Otherwise, this thread would have been terrible. But Lewin says that's exactly what it did, and it's long overdue, and I'm not white either. Levi replies, it's a damn shame you don't understand the necessity of the Voting Rights Act and think we don't need it anymore. Lewin says, you don't need it. Every person in the United States can be anything they put forth the effort to be. The only people screaming about suppression are the lazy people, and it doesn't matter what color they are. And it's been that way since the 70s. So what the reason this one, and I chose this one, is because of the fact that when the VRA actually got overturned by the Supreme Court and literally gutted by the Supreme Court, my first reaction was that minority majority districts were a form of segregation in and of themselves. And so I thought, hey, this is a great thing, because we're getting rid of that form of segregation. We're getting rid of districting based on race, which in my mind, that's what it is. And it looks like Lewin had that same mentality, but hasn't come to the understanding of it's not just about districting by race. It's about making sure that resource allocations go where they need to go and having the right people representing their constituency. So I figure I'll turn the first response over to Jamil. Jamil, what do you have to say?
I also do want to point out that there have been congressional districts that have been drawn for the sake of literally drawing all the Black people in a particular area in, regardless of if they even live in close proximity to one another. Thereby, so before 2000, I'll say this, before 2022, within the state of Florida, we had 4 majority minority districts, basically four black districts. I'll say that. That was cut down with the 2022 map to 2. And now with this particular map, it's all but gutted. It gutted all of them. There have been instances within Florida, as well as within other states, that they would draw a majority minority district in a way to where that would essentially be the only majority minority district in that particular state, and those people don't even live within a 25 to 30 mile radius of one another. But they're doing it to essentially make that district the only district that's going to have any significant minority power. And those resources have to be split between all of essentially the Black cities or the Black areas of that particular state. So now it's diluting the representation. Not only is it diluting the representation for Black and minorities, but it's also diluting the resource allocation, because now it's essentially, this is a great example for y'all. It's essentially chow time in chow hall, and they throw one big old plate on the table, and everybody's fighting for the best parts of the food on the table, and whatever's left over is the scraps for those who weren't considered for proper resource allocation.
I like that explanation. Think about people on profiles, right? People trying to crunch over to a fucking table full of shit, right? And I think, like, for me, one of the things that I have a hard time understanding, and Jamil can say this because he lives in Jacksonville too, is I try to have some very, like, interesting conversations with BIPOC veterans, especially in the Northwest corridor of Jacksonville, because I also live in the north part of Jacksonville, right? I don't live in the Northwest. I live in the Northeast corridor, but I'm close enough to pass the highway. And whenever I try to talk to them about like getting involved in veteran stuff, like they're retired, you see their hats, like retired, blah, 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 blah. And they like just have such a different view of certain things that it blows my mind sometimes that I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And then Angie Nixon, Representative Angie Nixon, explained it to me when I was at her shop. I built Revolt High School, which is in the Northwest Corridor, so I ate lunch there like twice a week. And I asked Angie about that, and she said because within the BIPOC community, especially within that corridor within Jacksonville, which is a whole nother conversation for a whole nother show of why that place exists the way it does. Is that's how they're taught to get out of poverty, right? Is like join the military, and recruiting is very heavy. Revolt has the only Marine Corps JROTC in the city of Jacksonville. Like the historically black high school is the only one with the Marine JROTC. And so it's always interesting to me when I see people that are like, oh, I'm not white. And I'm like, how are we on such different fucking wavelengths of thought here? Like how, and we see this within our community, and it's not even a BIPOC issue, it's a veteran issue. Is like we're out here in the streets, like fighting for veteran benefits, and how many times for effect do we get? What benefits did we lose? Nothing, you dumb motherfucker, because we fought for it. like that's why. And it's people like this that are BIPOC that are like, what did we lose? Nothing, because people like Jamil are in the fucking streets, you idiots. Like without people like that, you're gonna lose everything. But there's only so many Jamils. There's only so many people on these panels that can fight for so long. We get burnt out and tired of arguing with people like Lewin. Of like, what planet do you fucking live on? Like, what realm do you live in that this administration somehow supports anybody that's not white? Or male, for that matter, right? Like, if you are not white and you are not a male, like, they don't give a fuck about you, right? Like, they don't give a shit if you're a Republican. They don't give a fuck. Like, right, white, rich, male. That's it. Like, that's it. And, like, it's just like this shit, it blows my mind sometimes, especially I've had an argument with a fucking black retired woman from the military who didn't understand DEI. I was like, you are fucking DEI. You, ma'am, you and me. I'm a vagina owner, but you more so like than me. So it just, god damn it, the shit blows my mind sometimes, guys. Like, it just blows my mind. Carl, do you have?
I respect the conversation. I respect the conversations that are being had. I also, I also want to just touch on this. It's mind blowing sometimes that we still have to really have these conversations in 2026, but it's not lost on me why we still have to have these conversations in 2026, because there's so many people that have bought into what this country has sold them, and that have bought into the capitalistic ideologies that the country has sold them. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, work hard, and you can get into this space that we're in right now. And it is a pain that a lot of times, as much as Logan's point is right, and that we do see Black faith leaders upholding the traditions of civil rights and social justice within this country even now. We do see a lot of Black faith leaders upholding the tradition of capitalism within capitalism and evangelicalism within Black spaces as well. And there has to be individuals such as myself and many other individuals who name the name of Christ, but also name the name of true liberation and true liberation and true revolution, which is sorely embedded within the Bible and within the teachings of Christ, and just on a day-to-day basis as Christians and socialists within this country. And that's it. Like that's my time. I also want to say this. I gotta step away for the remainder of the pod, because I gotta get my daughter ready and set for school in the morning. This was dope. Like this was dope. This was great. Anytime y'all want to invite me back, please do. I ain't had this much fun on a political podcast outside of mine in a minute. So like yeah, like this was wonderful. I enjoyed it.
Jamil, before you leave, can you, because we'll have Sam do his thing, can you please do the call to action for tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday? Can you please do those 3 calls to action?
Ooh, listen, I am this is why I have to look on my face because I've been going crazy. Planning a lot of these things. So State Representative Angie Nixon, who was mentioned by Katie, who is state representative for District 13 here in the state of Florida, that covers key parts of Jacksonville and Duval County, is facing a hearing from the Rules and Ethics Committee for the Florida State House, as if they should be the end all know all of rules and ethics. Ethics. That's funny. She's facing a rules and ethics hearing to possibly be censured for this upcoming special session, as well as just censure from the State House period. That hearing is happening from 2 to 3 at the state capitol in Tallahassee. If you are in the Tallahassee area, or if you're in Florida and can make it to Tallahassee, we need bodies. We need people. We need people that will stand with Angie, and we need people that will stand not only with Angie, but stand up to the state legislature and not silencing Black voices. Friday, we're also having we're having a local action in Tallahassee that will kickstart the All Roads Lead to the South weekend, which once again is going to be at the state capitol. Our central focus around that is the fact that yesterday was the first day of special session for the state budget. To give you a quick rundown about how legislative session is actually supposed to go here in the state of Florida, it's 60 days. Even number years, it starts from January to March. Odd number years, it starts from March to May. By the time we get to March, for this even number year, by the time we get to March, along with all of the bills and laws that they pass, they're also supposed to pass a state budget. We got to March 13th, which ironically was the day before my wedding. We got to March the 13th, and we still didn't have a state budget in the state of Florida. We then turned around April the 27th and the 28th and had a special session. It wasn't around the state budget. It was around those raggedy gerrymandered maps, because racism supersedes actually taking care of our state employees and allocating proper resources for cities and municipalities in the state of Florida. So now, yesterday, May the 12th, was the first day for the special session around the actual passing of a state budget. And so we're tying everything in. You're silencing Black voices, you're silencing Black voters with these maps, and you're also prioritizing racism and partisanship over allocating resources to your cities and municipalities for your state. We then have everybody get back on the bus and head off to Montgomery. For all roads lead to the south. 1 p.m. Alabama, Alabama State Capitol, Montgomery, Alabama. We will be there to make sure that people understand, in the immortal words of Andre Lauren Benjamin, aka Andre 3000, that the South still got something to say. And the South definitely still got something to say when it comes to fighting for Black political and organizing power. So if you are able to make it on one of those 3 days, please do so, because it's going to be a glorious and powerful time. And as always, Black voters matter. 365. Can't stop, won't stop.
Thank you so much, Jamil, for coming. We will have you back. Like, I am so glad that you had fun here. That makes me happy. And we will absolutely love to have you back to talk about a follow-up of the trip, of your thoughts on it and stuff like that. We always like to do follow-ups to talk about big actions. So we'd love to have you back to get your thoughts on it, how it went, your purview and stuff like that. So we'll get you scheduled so we can talk about that. All right. Thanks, Jamil. What's next? That's what we just did. For us, just quick before we go into Sam's field report. For us, of course, join. But Vets Against Fascism is the container that veterans across the country are joining under. It's not owned by any single organization. It's owned by a myriad of organizations. It's just a place for veterans to organize together. The next meeting is the first Sunday of June. So that is going to be June the 7th. Please join us. A flyer will go out across social medias. We will collaborate with myriad of people. And you can join us, right? Like, contact us on social media. We have a website, 5051vets.com. You can join Tom's org is Fight Against Fascism. And now I would love to hear from Sam about his field report. Sam, are you still there?
Absolutely. So, man, there's a lot going on in the South Carolina State House. Last night, the way things ended appeared to blow up on Twitter some. So I want to go back to Friday of last week and then take us to what I know now. Friday of last week, the House, I take that back, Thursday of last week, a sine die resolution is sent from the House to the Senate. And so our legislative session ends tomorrow. If bills aren't passed by tomorrow, it is dead. Unless it is in this extenuating circumstance in the sine die. So they said, hey, redistricting, we're going to add redistricting to the sine die. And so the House passed that and it went to the Senate. So the vote in the Senate yesterday did not approve the sine die, which means that the House has until tomorrow to pass the bill. So we go back to Friday in the House. Friday in the House, I think it's like the Judiciary Subcommittee, 5 members, they heard 2 bills, H 5683 and H 5684. One was the gerrymandered map, and the other one was a bill. I don't know if I can share my screen, but I can explain this one. It is a bill that would change the primary date for Congress. It would create 2 separate elections in the state of South Carolina. Now remember, I'm running in Congress, right? It would change my election date to August. And they had a lot of public testimony. They had a lot of public testimony. The head of the SEC came up and said, like, we've received 300 mail-in ballots already. Our primary in South Carolina is June 9th. Our primary is less than a month away, and they're talking about changing part of it. So we've already received 300 votes, and they're mail-in votes, so you know that it's a good portion of those are probably going to be from overseas military members that are deployed for Trump's bullshit, right? So this bill would nullify their vote for Congress. We would be canceling legitimate ballots. We would be spending taxpayer money because the ballots are already printed. We would have to go back and reprogram the machines. The budgets have already been passed. The counties would have to go back and find funding in their budget for a second election. The state budget has been passed. They would have to find money to fund a second election. Nothing about this is conservative in its principle, be it small government, be it election integrity, be it, fiscal responsibility. They are jumping through an insane amount of hoops to make this happen. So Friday, they hear this. One bill, the bill that says, we can change the election date, that one goes up to the main committee. And the bill looking at the map holds tight until Tuesday. Well, I take a full day off work on Tuesday and I go back to the State House, right? And there's a bigger component of people. Both times the rooms are packed. You got people in the overflow room. Tuesday, however, is where this is where stuff gets, I've got some issues with. Tuesday, we hear again from the FEC guy or the SEC guy, and we hear from the actual map maker who is, that's something that I want to share in a minute. But again, to get us where we're at now, it passes out of subcommittee, it goes into the full committee hearing, and at 6 o'clock at night, after hours of testimony, they pass the bill along party lines, and it goes to the House. I don't think that bill was heard in the House today, but because it was defeated, not even the bill, but the signing die resolution, just the option to discuss this after the 14th was defeated, the House didn't really touch it today. The governor, Henry McMaster, is going to call a special session as soon as it ends at 5:01 p.m. tomorrow. As soon as our session ends, he's going to call a special session. He doesn't need that. They're going to try and force this to happen. So with that said, I want to look at the map for a moment. I want to look at why it's bad. Okay? And I haven't actually shared my screen on here yet, so let's hope that I don't screw it up. Boom, entire screen, window 2. There we go. Let's get this guy's face out of here for a second. So here's our current map in the state of South Carolina. It is gerrymandered to hell. I'm here in the 2nd district. I'm somewhere in this area, and it reaches around, right? Does a good reach around Columbia and grabs hold of Fort Jackson. This is Fort Jackson, okay? This is Congressman Joe Wilson's district. Obviously, he's prior military, sits on the House Armed Services Committee, the Foreign Affairs Committee. Like he wants to have Fort Jackson within his sphere of influence. This is Clyburn's district. This is the district that is a majority-minority district that they are going to eviscerate. Okay? Down here, this is one of our major cities. This is Charleston, South Carolina. You can see that Charleston is split between Nancy Mace and Clyburn. And then up here, this is like Ralph Norman, but this is Greenville. Greenville is a very conservative stronghold. Notice that it is intact, though. Charleston is split, Columbia is split, and then Myrtle Beach out here that I'm sure y'all are familiar with up there in North Carolina, Myrtle Beach is also intact. So let's move to our next one. This is the proposed map. Notice what they've done is they have completely removed Clyburn, who lives in Richland. They have pushed him up to what we call the PD area. Okay? So they have pushed him out of his district. If we zoom in on Columbia, you can see right here that Columbia is now split between 3 different congressional districts. You have District 2, which will be mine, or which could be mine, if I can win this primary. You have District 3, which I think is Sherry Briggs. And then this is District 5, which is currently Ralph Norman, but I don't think he's running because he's running for governor, right? Clyburn, nowhere to be found now. He is completely out of Columbia. Okay. We're going to come down here to the coast. We look at Charleston. Charleston is now tied into Myrtle Beach, which is more Republican. So they've come into the bottom of Charleston and grabbed this central part, and you'll love the name of this little town up here. This little town right here is called Lincolnville. It was named after President Lincoln because it's a historically black town. That's the end of District 1, right? So, you know, they're kind of splitting it right there, dividing up some of those votes. Again, if you're looking at our more left-leaning areas in the state, they've been shattered, right? So right here you have the three: Columbia, Charleston, Greenville. These are our three major metropolitan areas. Columbia, more Democratic split. Charleston, more Democratic split. Greenville, Republican stronghold, that gets to be together. How is this fair? Why are we not keeping communities intact? We have 7 representatives, right? And we only have 3 major metropolitan areas in the state of South Carolina. There is no reason, right, talking about fairness, talking about what do you look for in the future, there's no reason that we couldn't have intact communities that one representative is kind of there. But even that is not necessarily a fair thing. So, like, what do we look for next? My suggestions, I want to see an increase in the size of the House. I want to see us increase the size of the House of Representatives. I want to see us use, and I'll jump over to this for a second. This is Fair Representation Act in South Carolina. This is proportional representation where you would vote, right, on a member, but you would have multi-members to a district. It's like having a couple teachers in a classroom. You can take a bigger class size, right, if you've got more teachers. Okay, so currently this is what it's set up as with Clyburn here, but this new map is going to get rid of Clyburn entirely. Okay, that's going to be its goal. But what you would have is essentially 3 members in the north and then 4 members in the south, and it would essentially guarantee, right, because you would only need 16 to 20% of the vote, it would essentially guarantee a Democratic voice at minimum in each of the sections of the state, and a potentially an independent voice in the district with 4, because you would only need 16% of the vote in order to wind up there. So again, this is kind of looking down the line. Like, I don't think that we put the cat back into the bag of majority minority districts. So what is the next way that we can innovate to the future that does hit this idea of adequate representation of the people? I think that this is one of the things, but again, this is the pipe dream, and I want to really kind of deal with the reality. So I want to play a very short video, because this is the problem that I have with this map. And y'all tell me if the sound comes through.
This map was recently produced following the Supreme Court's decision in Louisiana v. Calais, and aims to achieve the state's political goal of maximizing the state's ability to elect Republican congressperson from each of the 7 congressional districts. This map was recently produced.
All right, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I'm kind of done with that. The idea that the state has a political goal of maximizing a single party's representation. Tuesday was somewhat contentious. There was a significant police presence, right? And so there's a moment that I have sitting waiting to give my second round of testimony, in that we have SLED agents that are in this room flanking us, multiple SLED agents flanking us. Bulletproof vest, right? Not full kit, right? But kitted up enough. And then it kind of clicks. There is a legitimate use of state power to suppress the opposition, which is a separate political party. So if we are allowing the recognized state government to use partisanship to then use force against the other partisanship, I have a fundamental problem with that as a fucking patriot. Right? And so I called it in my testimony. I said, this is systematic discrimination based on political affiliation. That's all there is to it. And y'all, I think this is a very important fight. The testimony that I've put out that I can kind of link, because I don't want to waste any more time tonight, but there's been so much positive feedback. One of them that got put up by Dave the Viking, that thing's at like 70 something thousand likes at this point. Like there's an appetite for fairness. There's an appetite for decency. There's an appetite to step back from the damn brink. And I think us as veterans, we have such a powerful voice in that because that's everything that we represent. And so, like, brothers and sisters, if you are out there and you're listening and your state's doing some shit like this, if South Carolina goes through with this, we reopen up the filing period. File and run for office. Run against the bullshit. Run for your values. Nobody's coming to save us, and we're going to have to be the change that we want to seek. I've stepped into the ring. It's cost money. It's been hell, but we're going to keep on fighting. Because how's that song go, Carl? Something about any climb in place, right? We'll throw hands wherever we go, wherever we need to. Right's right, wrong's wrong. Fuck it, we ball. I'm done.
I fathom that's a Marine saying between Marines. Am I correct in that assumption?
Which one? The fuck it, we ball?
No, the one you said before that you directed at Carl, the only.
Oh yeah, well
Marine
it's in our Marine Corps hymn. It's in the hymn.
That makes sense. Okay,
Yep.
cool. Hannah, did you want to say your quick bit, or are you good?
I'm good for tonight.
Okay. So, obviously, tonight was a massively important discussion, right? And Sam said it best, so I'm not going to repeat it. But, like, veterans need to get involved in this because tonight was not really about maps, right? We talked a lot about maps, but it's not about maps, right? It was about representation, trust, constitutional responsibility, and whether democracy remains something Americans shape or something increasingly engineered around them. And we saw that by Sam's map of the engineering like a donut. And so that's the bigger question here. And are we going to sit back and watch it? Or are we going to use our voices as veterans and civilians? Rihanna. Are we going to speak out against this in our own representative states? Because I know Logan doesn't live in a state, the hellish scape that we do in the Southeast. But are you going to speak out and use your voice, your authority at your state house? Are you going to come to Alabama? Are you going to support the cause? Are you going to use your body to protect your Black and brown brothers and sisters? Because as they go for their vote, history is going to repeat itself. Violence by those in power will happen. And it is our duty as veterans to stand against authoritarianism and power abuses. And Logan spoke on it earlier about, like, we all sit here about our oath. That's the true oath that we don't talk about, is protecting our citizens against our government should it ever become tyrannical. And we're getting there. I think we're there, but that's my own opinion. All right, so the way we close out is the same way every time for everybody watching. If you've never seen it, it's not weird. It happens weekly in the military. We just do it here as a gentle reminder to our veteran friends watching to not be a fucking degenerate. So it's called a safety brief. And it happens every Friday, close of business. It's done by your leadership to remind you how to not be a fucking degenerate over the weekend so your leadership doesn't get called. People like Carl and myself showed up probably to a lot of police stations in our time in the military to retrieve human beings. I was one of those human beings at one point in my career. So we always start out with saying, do not beat your spouse, your child, or your pet. Eat an actual meal. Gas station food doesn't count, apparently, with this fucking group. And neither does nicotine or caffeine. Like, you have to eat actual food. Drink water like you mean it, right? Especially for those of us in the southeast. It's getting hot as fuck. It was 90 degrees here in Florida today. Get some sleep. Nothing good happens after 0 to 100 except for poor decisions and quite possibly Waffle House. You can skip Waffle House unless you know how to fight, though. If you've been running hard for weeks, we know rest is not weakness. It's part of the resistance. Okay? Take all of your fucking meds. Don't skip them. Don't think you don't need them because you feel better. That's why you fucking feel better, is your meds, right? Like, so keep taking them. Also, make all of your appointments, right? And make appointments that you don't want to make. Speaking to a few of you. If your mind's getting dark, reach out to somebody, right? Like our group, we don't fucking sleep well. Our vice president definitely doesn't fucking sleep well. So if you message us, whoop, we will be up, one of us. On the same vein, don't fucking drink and drive. If you do drink and drive, that's not great, right? You're going to kill somebody, and that's not fair to you, the other family, all that shit. I personally am 13 years sober. I'm not going to fucking preach sobriety. It's not for everybody. It's for me. What I will preach, however, is that you don't drink and drive. And if you don't have the money, you do message us. I will personally pay for your Uber, right? I will personally pay for that motherfucker. Isolation is where problems multiply, right? So reach out to your battle buddies. For everybody on this call, reach out to a battle buddy that you haven't talked to in a while. Just check in. You don't have to talk politics, although you should, especially if they're not in a group. But if you haven't heard from them in a while, check in, right? 22 a day is still a fucking thing around here. Do your self-checks. Breast cancer doesn't care how busy you are. Our vice president is going through breast cancer right now herself, and there is a high rate of breast cancer within our community among women. There are studies being done on it. We are going to have a special episode talking about this specifically within our community. Right? Stretch. You're not 22 anymore. I stretch every morning. I work in construction. I encourage everybody to fucking stretch, right? Put your dog on a leash. Your friendly baby is probably not friendly to everybody else. We have somebody on this call who lost a pet because you're a fucking dick. Make sure you leash your pets. If you come near my pets, other people will shoot your pets. Fuck around and find out, right? Do not fight wildlife, right? Like, there was a thing in the military, like, don't play with wildlife. That applies in fucking civilian life, too. Especially geese. They have tenure. Don't think you will win. You will absolutely lose, right? If it hisses, charges, or has antlers, only white women can tame that motherfucker. If you are not a white woman with an unusual amount of fucking confidence, leave that motherfucker alone. If you are that white woman with an unusual amount of confidence and you're going to tame a wild animal, record that shit and send it to us because it's a proven theory. White women don't give a fuck. Do participate in barter systems, especially if it involves coffee beans, marijuana, and watermelon. Always, barter systems are amazing. But if you happen to find those plants later on a sidewalk, that shit's raccoon behavior. We support it fully. And then we're going to check on the plants. Emotional support potatoes are widely acceptable. Use them wisely if it's handed to you. It's a thing of power. Do not build a golden calf. Or guillotines for that matter. It's widely frowned upon, even within our own community. Do not buy wild animals off of the dark web. That's also frowned upon, because even though you make the policy point and you win the argument, you still have something to do with the animal. It's just not worth the effort. Also, do not conduct live fire exercises in housing developments. The civilians don't like that shit, and the military doesn't either, quite frankly. Make good decisions, right? If you're unable to make good decisions, make possible legendary ones. And if they are legendary ones, like, record it, send it to us. And most importantly, like I said earlier, our oath is to the Constitution. But what that actually means is to the people of this country that we are fighting to keep our government fucking stable. Not tyrannical, not authoritarian, not fascist, right? And that's where the fuck we are, unfortunately, as a country. So that means we have to protect those to our left and our right. When we're out in the streets, we all go to actions. So, as we do that, especially over this weekend, if you're in Alabama, if you plan on going to Alabama and you are a veteran, please reach out to our page. Like, there has been a very specific ask that has been made of us as veterans. Please reach out. Like, there is an ask. If you're going, let us know. I'm going. See you there. If you are not going, you cannot make it to Alabama. Gas is fucking expensive. So if you can't make it, right, there is a chance to have a satellite fucking protest in your area. You don't have to be in the Southeast. But if you are in the Southeast, that is your fucking duty. Host a satellite protest to stand up that all roads lead to the South. White supremacy will not fucking dominate our culture any longer. That we are going to stand up for our black and brown brothers and sisters, especially in the Southeast. We're not going to let their power or their voice be diluted, and especially as veterans, because our black brothers and sisters in uniform for fucking generations, they didn't fucking matter to those in power. They mattered to us in uniform because we fought beside them. We were in foxholes with them. We went through basic training with them. We deployed with them. But now is our time to actually do something about that, like, companionship, that bond that we have in the military. It's your time to stand up, right? I hope to see you in Alabama. I will absolutely be there. But if you're not, I hope to see you on our next one on Wednesday. No, Saturday. Today's Wednesday. Saturday. And we will go over field reports across the country. We hope to hear from you at that point. I hope y'all have learned a lot tonight. I have from my personal friend Jamil. He lives here in Jacksonville. I've organized with him for a while now, actually. And he is lovely. I always love hearing from him. I always learn so much that I didn't know, and I always love to learn more. So I hope you tune in on Saturday, host a satellite protest, and if not, boost every protest flyer you see across social media so that we get the word out loudly and widely. All roads lead to the South. I hope you have a good night.